Listening to Tin Pod Radio. This is Nick Brokenshire from the Once and Future Queen.
I'm Chloe. I guess I cosplay sometimes. I assume that's why y'all are listening to this. It's because you want to hear about my cosplay. So yeah, I do that. Just started doing con vlogs recently as well, which is why I want to point out my YouTube channel. So that's something that I've just gotten into. We're trying to make it better. I know it's not great right now, but we're doing our best. I'm in Florida, but I mostly just go to northern conventions because my best friend slash partner in crime slash co-host of the YouTube channel is actually from Maryland, so I usually just go up there to go to conventions. I don't know what else is there. I don't know how detailed people go in their intros.
It depends. It varies from person to person. To start stuff out, you want to let people know how you got into cosplay?
Well, for me, it was kind of like a step-by-step kind of thing, because I always, knew people that cosplayed, when I was younger and stuff, but I was never into, that kind of nerd stuff. But then, and once I got to college, I actually started playing video games for the first time and watching anime for the first time, so I didn't even get into that stuff until, I was quite older. And at a certain point, my friends were like, hey, you know enough, basic stuff, you should come to a con with us. So I went to a convention, and my first one, it was all right, but basically I started going to cons, and for a few years I would go to cons and not cosplay. So I was really just going to, see voice actors and panels and go shopping and that kind of thing, because being newly into anime, it was oh wow, this person voices all these characters and you can meet them. That's so cool. So that's kind of what I was there for. But as far as cosplay, once you're around it so much, you're kind of oh, I want to do this too. So I started doing it myself, and here we are.
Well, that was kind of like that with me. I have a lot of friends who are huge cosplayers, and they do it a lot. And the more and more I'm around them, the more I'm like, I like to do it sometimes too.
It's kind of like peer pressure, but not intentionally or in a bad way. It's just kind of oh, it looks like so much fun. I want to try.
With your first con experience where you were cosplaying, do you remember what the first one where you were specifically going to do it for that?
I had a couple of things before this point that were kind of failures, so I don't really count them. So I always count my first cosplay as Alice from Pandora Hearts, and I made that for Holiday Matsuri in 2013. So I consider the end of 2013 as my start point, because that's when I started really making stuff myself. So that was the first thing I made that was pretty much by myself. And it was not great, and I ended up remaking parts of it after that, and it was still kind of not great. But honestly, I still had fun, even though, I actually mentioned this on my Instagram story recently. That was the only time I actually, crunched for a con. That's the only time. That was the only time that I ever pulled an all-nighter, was that first, time I was cosplaying to a con, because I hadn't finished. So I pulled an all-nighter the night before. I was still sewing in the hotel room, and I said, never again. I'm never doing this again, and I have not done that since. I always finish ahead of time now, because I'm not doing that. So, but that was the first time I pulled an all-nighter. But I still actually had a lot of fun, because people did recognize recognized the outfit and they still complimented me on it, even though like it wasn't great, but maybe they knew it was like, I was a beginner, so it was still fun. So that was kind of like the first thing that I ever did.
You was talking about being recognized. Do you remember the first time somebody asked you for your picture?
It might have been then. It was obviously a few years ago, so I don't remember exactly. The next time that I wore that outfit was actually SwampCon, which is like some stupid like local convention here in Gainesville. But my best friend that I mentioned earlier, that was actually the first time that she came to visit me, and the first time that we actually met in person because we met online. So she came down in January. We went to Disney, and SwampCon happened to be going on. So I was like, hey, let's go to SwampCon together. So we cosplayed from Pandora Hearts together, and we cosplayed from Fullmetal Alchemist together. So that was kind of fun because it was our first time actually cosplaying together after having talked online for so much. And obviously, like, there, people asked for our pictures and stuff, especially, like, in FMA because that's pretty popular. Even though, again, the costumes weren't great because we were both pretty early in it. But it was a lot of fun.
Do you still have your first costume?
It's in my closet somewhere. I keep being like, I'm just gonna throw this out, but I still have it somewhere. But I certainly wouldn't wear it now.
Are you the type of cosplayer that, like, only cosplays a costume a couple of times and then moves on? Or do you bring stuff out at different times?
It kind of depends on the outfit. For the most part, I rewear stuff, like, quite a lot. Usually for a convention, I'll try to make, like, 1 or 2 new things, and then the rest will be rewears. So usually, like, if I make something new, I'll wear it to that convention, and then I'll wear it again to the next one, like, whatever the one after that is. But it kind of depends. Like, there's some things that I've only worn a couple of times just because either, like, it's hard to wear or it's bulky or something, and then there's stuff that I've worn, like, to every convention that I've gone to. Like, I have a few outfits that I wear, like, a million times. So it really just kind of depends on, like, how it kind of fits into my lineup and what else I'm doing and, like, okay, what am I going to rewear this time? But I definitely try to get some use out of them, especially now that I make, like, better quality stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, this is actually going to last and not, like, fall apart.
You talked about being prepared, like, getting your costumes ahead of time so you don't have to rush at the last second. Are you the type of cosplayer? I've had a few tell me they not only map out the costumes of, say, a convention is like 3 days, but they also have, like, an emergency costume that's, like, in case they don't feel good and they just want to, like, be casual about it.
Kind of. Usually, like, I plan out what I'm gonna wear for the weekend. Often I will bring something that's a little bit comfier, like, for night or for Sunday, because you're kind of, like, tired by that point. So I kind of try to plan to wear, like, the more difficult to wear things, like, earlier in the day. So when I get tired of it, I can change into the more comfortable one. More comfortable or more, like, casual, I guess. Not a lot, but a few. So I'll try to, like, bring those along just in case.
Another question on preparedness, like, I ask people, like, what's the one thing besides your costume that you always have to have with you for a convention?
Well, I guess now it would be our vlogging camera, which we're getting a new one soon. So yeah, we're always filming at cons, or we have been for the past couple. And I have one of those little, like, Polaroid cameras. Actually, it's not Polaroid, it's Instax is the brand. But it basically, like, prints out little Polaroid type pictures. I always have that with me at cons because for me, cons are kind of times that I see friends that I don't see often. And obviously we're being cute in our costumes together. So I take a lot of cute, like, little Polaroid pictures while I'm there.
Have you gotten used to people wanting to take pictures with you, or is it still, like, kind of a new experience?
I guess I'm used to it. I guess I've been doing it long enough that it's, like, kind of expected, especially, like, I don't know, it depends, because a lot of stuff I cosplay is not as well known, so I might go the whole day and not have anyone recognize me, but then you'll get, like, the 2 people that are like, oh my god, and it's like, you feel bonded with them, because you're like, oh, you also know this thing. Whereas cosplaying, like, something like Fire Emblem is, like, more popular, so you'll get, like, a lot more people, like, stopping you or whatever. The cutest thing that ever happened was, not this past KatsuCon, but the one before. I was in Lissa from Fire Emblem, and then Becky and we went to get food, and we were walking back, and this, like, little child wanted to take a picture with me, and I was like, oh, this is so cute. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I don't know if they even, like, knew what I was from or anything, because it was, like, a little kid, but it was just like, oh, this child thinks I look pretty. Like, it was really cute.
In the first episode of this show, I talked to a cosplayer called UtmostUmbreon. I don't know if you ever talked to him.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We're pretty good friends, actually.
It's a great episode. He talked about
Yeah.
one of the things was about, and I discussed it too, is like, I don't know a lot about some of the stuff people are cosplaying in, but I just love it. Like, I never knew anything about Fire Emblem, and I had like a ton of people that did nothing but Fire Emblem stuff on my Instagram, so I was just like, this stuff's awesome. Like, the costuming are awesome. Like, I think the one thing about cosplay is, like, you don't even have to know everything about it to appreciate what somebody did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's certainly things like that, too, that I'm not familiar with, but when I see cosplays of, I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And, something like Fire Emblem, it's pretty, like, complicated outfits, so...
Yeah, they look
I just keep doing this to myself.
And I only played that game, like, twice, I think. But
well, there's like 16 of them.
Oh,
so...
are they? I played one at Walmart one time. No, it was at Target. I think.
Yeah. There's a lot. Like, I've actually only played like the few most recent ones, so I'm not even like that familiar with like Fire Emblem, like the older series. But yeah, it's like a pretty complicated thing, I guess. But it's fun.
Do you usually cosplay stuff that you're really, really familiar with, or do you sometimes see something like, oh, I want to cosplay that, and then you learn about it?
I would say mostly, like, the first one, like, stuff that I'm familiar with. I guess if I'm, like, starting to get into something new, I might kind of look and see, like, if I were to cosplay from this, who would I cosplay? Like, for example, like, I keep talking about Becky. Becky and I always get each other into, like, whatever series that we're into. So when she was trying to get me into, Yona of the Dawn, I started watching it, and like watching the opening with all the characters, I was like, I like that one. I want to cosplay that one. But I didn't even tell her because I didn't know if it would change when I actually saw the characters. But then, of course, he did end up being my favorite. I was like, yes, I want to cosplay him. So sometimes I kind of know just from looking at them, like, this one is going to be my fave. But sometimes you don't really know, because I usually like cosplaying like my favorite character. That's kind of what I base it on.
Do you like cosplaying in groups or a character on your own?
I prefer groups, or at least like duos, because we usually do duo stuff. Sometimes we might have a bigger group, but I'll do solo stuff sometimes, but I think it's way more fun when you have other people that are cosplaying from the same thing as you, that you kind of hang out with, and like I said, take cute pictures and all that.
Mentioning pictures, like, we all know, like, that's a huge thing for cosplayers at conventions, like photo shoots or getting pictures just done with their friends. Do you automatically think of that as if, like, when you're going cosplay or go to conventions, like, well, we gotta plan out photos, we gotta plan out maybe a photo shoot, or right?
Yeah, definitely. I love photo shoots. So that's always kind of like the first thing that we do. Usually, like, whatever we're cosplaying that's new, like I mentioned, I'll usually make a couple of new things, and then I'll rewear other stuff. Whatever's new, we'll usually get a shoot for at some point, and those you usually have to book ahead of time. So it's like, okay, we know we have this hour for this, and then once the con schedule comes out, we kind of like plan around that, like, okay, well, that's blocked out. What else can we do around this time? And just like figure it out, because we always like whenever the con schedule comes out, like the panel schedule, it's like, okay, let's go through and find what we want to go to, and then we like see which ones we have in common, and etc., and just kind of like plan out the whole weekend. And it doesn't always go according to plan, of course, because you might end up doing something different. But yeah, we always try to get shoots because they're super fun.
With shoots and like having to spend time with friends, like finding that time to do that, do you get to do a lot of the stuff you used to do in the beginning, like go to panels a lot or meet people?
I do. I mean, it kind of depends on the convention. Usually we'll go to like a few panels per con. I would like to go to more, but a lot of the times we're so busy that we end up not being able to go to a lot of them. But definitely, like, if there is a particular person that we want to see or get an autograph for, we'll do that. I don't know, just like, for example, I went to Otakon this past year, and the thing with Otakon is that their dealer's room and artist alley are humongous. So we spent like the entire time just like shopping because it took that long to like go through everything. So we ended up not doing like a lot else. So I was like, oh my god, that just like ate all of our time. But then at KatsuCon, like, it's not as human. Sometimes there's a bunch of panels that I want to go to that sound super interesting, and sometimes there's not. Like, sometimes I'll look at a schedule and be like, whatever. But I feel like we have certain things that we, like, always try to do. Like, we always do shoots. If there's, like, a meetup, I really like meetups also. So, like, for example, if there's a Fire Emblem meetup and I'm cosplaying Fire Emblem, I want to go to the meetup. Because it's basically kind of like a huge group shoot, but you're, like, meeting all these new people and such. So we always try to do that. We always, I like going to the game room, so I would try to do that at some point. Obviously, shopping is one of those things, depending how much time it takes, but that's, like, one of the things you have to hit. At this past KatsuCon, one of our friends took us to karaoke, and we didn't participate in the karaoke, we just observed the karaoke, and it was a blast. So that's on our to-do list now as well, is we have to go to karaoke at some point. So it's just kind of like the few things like, okay, we have to do this at some point.
Like see people karaoke in content, in character.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was really interesting. It was really entertaining. So definitely enjoyed that.
I know one of the most entertaining things, like, well, you know that Florida actually has a lot of conventions, like quite a few.
Right, yeah, and I don't go to any of them.
And like
I go to Hallmat, and that's it.
And I'll go like to some, like, I'll be in Orlando and there'll be a convention, and all of a sudden you walk into like a McDonald's and there's people cosplaying like everything from Link to Attack on Titan and stuff. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
When you talked about earlier about being like with a group of friends and stuff, do you think that's one of the biggest appeals of cosplay at conventions, is like the community you can build?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's certain friends that, like, I only see at cons, or, like, for the most part, I only see at cons. Like I was mentioning, like, my best friend, like, we're long distance, so we still get to see each other a few times a year because we'll go to conventions together. And sometimes we'll visit each other outside of conventions too, but it's like, these are like the set times that I'm gonna see you. And then there's other friends too that, like, depending what region I'm visiting, I'm gonna see there. So it's always, like, exciting of, like, oh, I get to hang out with everyone, and it's kind of like a big reunion.
We all know cosplaying is an expensive art form. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Whether even if you just consider it something you're just doing lightly, I mean, the supplies alone cost a lot of money. What do you think about people who not only want to commercialize it, and I don't want to say commercialize it in a bad way, but just make money off prints and make money off of photo shoots and stuff like that? Are you big into that, or are you not as much?
I mean, I wouldn't do it, but power to them.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a job. I make pretty good money. This is my hobby. I pay for it myself. So, I don't know. To me, it's kind of, like, weird sometimes to see people being like, oh, here's my goal on my whatever thing so I can go to this con. And I'm just like, if I couldn't afford to go to a con, I wouldn't go to the con. Like, I wouldn't ask my internet followers for money. But I guess it's just, like, a different atmosphere, mindset. I don't know. It's very strange to me. I don't know. Like, I also feel like I'm an adult and I have, like, an established career, and I'm not trying to make money in any way off of this. So I guess usually when I see people posting that kind of thing, they do have some kind of financial tie into it, which personally I wouldn't want, because I feel like that would be, like, much more pressure if I'm, like, using this to make money. Like, I don't have to care if my stuff is nice or not. Like, I don't care how many followers I have. Like, it's nice when people like my pictures, but I share pictures because I want to share them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just very recreational for me. So, yeah, I'm not really interested in any of that stuff, but if people want to do it, power to them. You know, do your thing.
Do you find, you personally, of course we ain't talking about everybody, but you personally, do you think if you started to do that, it would take some of the fun out of it?
I don't know, because I feel like on the one hand, people say, like, if you're doing something you love, then you love your job, or something like that, but I don't know. For me, it's like, I like having the ability to do as much or as little as I want, and not constantly work on things. I mean, I used to be an art student back in high school, and I thought I wanted my career to be in art. My first major was going to be graphic design, or my major was going to be graphic design. Then I actually got to college, and I was like, oh man, I'm interested in so many other things. Like, I don't want to do graphic design. So I ended up getting my bachelor's in anthropology, because that's what I was interested in. And I was like, I don't want to do art as a job. No, it's fine as a side thing, but I don't want that to be my job. And getting into cosplay has been really great for me because it's like having that creative outlet, but it's outside of work. It's a completely separate sphere, and doing the vlogs too is also like a creative outlet, or making videos in general, like making editing decisions and stuff. Like for me, it's all just fun. Like it's super fun.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do this if it wasn't fun. But I like having, kind of the hobbies like a side thing.
And
for me personally.
And it's not insulting to anybody. It's just saying, like, you do it this way, other people do it another way. I think a lot of people look at if you say something's a hobby, it means you don't take it seriously. And it's not. You can have a hobby you take very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me it's just like anything else, like gardening or cooking, or like, like one of my friends just got into gardening and she like spent all this money on plants and she's like trying to grow vegetables and she bought all these pots, and it's like the same thing. Like you're putting money and time into this, but it's for fun, it's like a de-stress thing. So I just kind of think of it like that.
One of the things I've discussed with other cosplayers is like, I think especially novices and people that are starting out, they look at like the Instagrams and they see how great these costumes look. They look at people like you and others and they're like, oh, that's a great costume. I could never do that. What would you tell them to let them know, like, yeah, you can do it. This wasn't just born perfect.
Yeah, we all have to start somewhere, and like whatever you do in the beginning, it's probably not going to be great. Or even if it is pretty good, it's not going to be perfect. I mean, my stuff still isn't perfect, Like, you wouldn't know maybe from a distance, but it's certainly not perfect. And like I said, I don't have to care if it's perfect or not, because it's just for fun. But, I started off not even knowing how to sew. Like, I didn't know anything. So, if it's something that you want to do, I think you just have to work hard and keep trying. Like, for me too, especially, cosplay is really like trial and error. Like, a lot of times I'll go into something not knowing what to do, and it's like, I'm gonna try this and see if it works, and sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. That's why I make mock-ups for everything, because I might fail miserably. But you just gotta keep trying, and it's like all really experimental, and like find something that you're good at, Just keep working at it. You'll get better.
Along the same lines, like, have you ever had a cosplay that you started that you really wanted to do and you just couldn't finish it for whatever reason? Like, you didn't have the technique or the skills set to do it, or just too much time?
I guess very early on, there were a couple things like that, where either I didn't finish it, or I finished it and it wasn't, like, satisfactory enough to wear it. But, these days I'm pretty good with calling it early on that I'm not going to be able to finish something. So sometimes I'll get really like, I'm going to make all this stuff for this con, and then I'll go back and be like, no, I'm not. I'm only going to make these 2 things, and I will do that other one at a later time, and I won't even start it then, Like, I'm pretty good at knowing what I can do in an amount of time. So I usually just don't even try.
With conventions, we know, like, conventions of any kind, whether it's, like, a comic convention, book convention, whatever, they're kind of a crazy atmosphere to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a story that would come to mind as, like, the weirdest story you ever had happen to you?
The weirdest story?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many weird people at cons sometimes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be bad.
People just say weird things, and I'm just like, oh, what? Okay. I don't know. I feel like my experiences are usually, like, pretty chill and normal.
Have you had good experiences for the most part?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been some bad stuff that has happened, but I've never really, like, had, like, an awful time. At least, like, any time in the past few years. Like, it's always, like, overall pretty good. I'm trying to think if there's anything weird that has happened. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is how we had our whole parking debacle at Otakon, which, if you watch the Otakon vlog, people, you'll see that. But basically, the parking garage that we had parked in, we, like, couldn't get into it, and so we had to have our Lyft driver take us to, like, this other garage. But she was, like, the nicest Lyft driver in the world. She was, like, a grandmother, and she was like, oh, I'm so excited to, like, pick up cosplayers, and it was super cute. So it was just kind of like this whole mess of, like, trying to figure out what to do, but, it wasn't, like, a super big deal or anything, but that was kind of, like, a weird thing that happened, I guess. Sometimes plans kind of go awry, But I've been fortunate. I haven't really had anything super bad happen. I think the worst thing that's happened is I had a photographer like cancel a shoot like day of. Like they tried to postpone it and then we're like, actually I'm gonna have to refund you, and I was like, okay. So that was super upsetting, but that's kind of like really the worst thing. Everything else is fine.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
With conventions, what's your favorite thing about them? Period. Like, it doesn't even have to be cosplay related.
I guess just like hanging out with my friends, and I guess doing photo shoots is probably like one of my favorite things. Which, I mean, you don't even have to be at a con to do photo shoots, because you can do them like outside of the con. But for me, like I said, like the convention is usually like the only time that I will see some of these people, so we kind of have to do it then. But I just think that's super fun. I don't know, just hanging out and goofing off, and now we've been filming and stuff, and at first I was worried that like filming would like take away, like we'd be too busy filming that we wouldn't be enjoying the con, but I think it's actually quite the opposite. Like I have a lot of fun filming, and going back and being able to watch the videos. I mean, I hope that other people enjoy them, but they're kind of for us too, because we can just go back and watch and be like, oh yeah, we had so much fun right there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, it's been really nice.
Like when the first couple of conventions I started doing podcasts with, I'd set up like interviews with authors or somebody, and I would go and record. And the first couple one, I didn't really do anything at the convention, and only did that. And I was like, I can't do that again, because I just want I want to enjoy the convention too. Also, and speaking of like not really really bad negative, but like what's the one like pet peeve thing that bugs you about conventions? Me, it's food. Like I can't stand the fact that like some of the food is just so overpriced and so bad.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. I always try to like, I like love food. I'm like obsessed with food, so I always like try to plan out like, all right, we can go to this restaurant, and I'm going to bring my own food for these days, and I need to make sure that I have breakfast available. I need to make sure that I have, like, coffee or caffeine and blah, blah. I, like, kind of, like, plan everything out. But, yeah, that can definitely, like, be a bother depending on the convention. Like, at Otakon, we would kind of have to go, like, a little bit far to get food, so that also, like, took time. Like I was saying, like, we barely got to do anything at Otakon, but also we weren't staying at the con hotel. We were staying, like, it was like a 10-minute walk, which isn't that much, but walking back and forth several times a day like took time, and then add walking to get food into that, so didn't get to do a whole lot that time, but it was still good.
Yeah, I know people that do like 2 and 3 costumes a day, and I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I usually will do 2 depending on what they are, but I'm trying to think of an actual answer to the question of what my pet peeve is. Probably, like, I don't have this problem with, like, the main person that I cosplay with, but people, like, not being ready on time, or, like, maybe not finishing their cosplay on time, or, like, canceling plans, and, like, sometimes any of that stuff is, like, understandable. Like, recently I had a friend, like, cancel something that we had planned together, but it was because, it was for good reason, but it's still, like, kind of frustrating, because, like, this is why Becky is, like, my cosplay, like, partners, because we're both very responsible, and we both like planning everything ahead of time, and we're super, like, okay, let's plan this all out, so we're always, like, ready to go, but then it's, like, whenever we do stuff with other people, sometimes it might get a little tricky, so it's not even really a pet peeve, it's just something that's kind of, like, this could be annoying if people, maybe they're not ready, or maybe they, like, have other plans to do, or something like that, I guess.
When it comes to, like, being on the floor, we know, like, and it's a little bit different conventions, because, like, I know in the past, a couple of conventions I went to, they separated the cosplayers almost in areas, like, oh, you're going to be on the stage, and you're doing this, but
oh, jeez.
It seems like most now, you just wonder like everybody else, unless you got one of these huge costumes that's like 3 hours long or something. Mm-hmm. But do you ever find yourself like still seeing somebody that you like think's cool, like an actor or voice actor or anybody, and then you're immediately like, I'm not cosplaying, I'm going talking to this person?
Not really, because usually, like, if there's someone that we want to see, we still go to the autograph session in cosplay, like just whatever we happen to be wearing. So at I guess it was KatsuCon, we went to get Caitlin Glass's autographs, and we were wearing Fire Emblem. And she does a voice in one of the games, but not the game that we were from. So she didn't know what we were from, but she still complimented our cosplays and like said we looked cool. And we were like, oh, thanks. And she was super cute. So yeah, I don't know. That doesn't really like affect my plans too much, I guess.
What do you think's the biggest misconception about cosplay?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know what people's conceptions are, to be honest. I'm like, maybe, I don't know, maybe, because I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of someone that's, like, on the outside, and I'm like, maybe they think that's just, like armor, or, like, kind of, like, the sexy cosplay or something, and, like, that's all it is, and it's like, no, there's a lot. There's all kinds of different things. Like, that's just one side that you could do. But I don't really know if people have that perception or not. It's like, I can't imagine, because like I said, I've always had nerd friends and like known cosplayers even before I was in it. So I'm like, oh, this is what my friends do. It wasn't like, I feel like I don't have that outsider perspective. And I mean, I'm thinking even about like my dad, like I'll show him my cosplays and he just thinks it's super cool that I like make costumes and like make it myself and stuff. So he's always just really impressed. He's like, oh yeah, that's so cool. So I don't really know what misconceptions people might have.
Well, I know some people like, and I've always had the philosophy, and other people have told me it's not like I come up with it. Like, cosplay's for everybody, and there's all kinds of different kinds of cosplay. And I know, like, one of the most popular ones now is kind of like the burlesque or like bombshell type cosplays and stuff like that. What's your opinion of those type cosplays?
I mean, like I said earlier, do your thing. Power to you. I'm not a fan because I just feel like that's not for me. Like, I'm not the audience for that. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a straight woman. I don't really want to look at women's butts. So, honestly, I've been unfollowing people that post that kind of thing because I just personally don't care to see it. Not to say they shouldn't do it. If you want to do it, that's cool. You do that. I wouldn't, just because that's not what anything that I'm interested in. But I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing, I guess. I mean, I guess I see people talk about it and they'll say, oh, I'm like doing this to feel more confident. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Sure. Whatever. If that's what you want to do, that's cool. Free country. Do whatever you want. But, definitely not something that I'm interested in either doing or looking at or anything. So I hope that's not offensive to anyone, but just,
no, I think, I don't have a problem with it, even though like it's not like one of my favorite kinds of cosplay or anything. But I think those type tend to be the ones that people single out these days as being like, oh, that's what cosplay is.
Yeah, and it's like, no, I mean, it's part of it. It's like one aspect, but there's all kinds of other, other things. So, yeah.
Everybody has strengths and weaknesses in anything they do. What would you say in cosplay is your strength and your weakness?
As far as like construction, I guess. Strength, I guess, is just like straight up sewing. Even though, like I said, I went into this not even knowing how to sew, but I kind of like taught myself or like with help from friends, and that honestly is like the easiest thing for me. Even though sometimes figuring out like more complicated stuff is like super annoying, and like I always use patterns of some sort. Like, I can't just, like, come up with stuff. I have to have, like, a pattern of some kind, even if I'm changing it a lot. It's kind of similar to cooking. Like, I'll look at, like, a recipe, and I'll be like, okay, that's what they did, but I'll change it up to, like, suit myself, but I still need the instructions. Like, I still need to know what temperature and what amount of time, but then I'll, like, change other stuff about it. So same thing with, like, using a pattern. Is like, I need to know the basic, like, way to put this together, but then I'm going to change it because this is what it actually looks like. But for me, that is, like, what I'm the best at, I think, is just sewing and, like, kind of, like, doing more of the detail stuff in regards to sewing. What I don't do is I don't do props. I don't do armor. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. That scares me. Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'm actually making some armor for an upcoming costume, and I'm going to be spending the weekend with Mur, and he's going to help me with it, because I don't have a clue. So that's definitely something that I'm more unfamiliar with. I usually just commission those things. Like, I always commission my props, and I've commissioned armor before. I mean, like I said, like, if I have the money, I don't mind just paying someone else to do it. It just saves me time and frustration, and I can work on the things that I actually enjoy, you know?
Yeah, I know that there's some people within cosplay that, like, say, like, oh, you should make everything for yourself, and I'm like, well, it really doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't make any of it, as long as you're, like, having fun with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But, like, I know most people usually have one thing they don't do great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you like, want to buy your cosplays and, like, not make anything, like, that's fine. You're still cosplaying. Have fun. You know?
Most people seem the armor is their big thing that they don't do well.
Oh, that they don't? Yeah. It's just, like, I don't know. If sewing is what you're familiar with, I feel like armor and props and that kind of thing, it's more like crafting. And for me, I know that, like, I don't have any of, like, the tools to do that. I mean, I guess my roommate has some stuff, like a heat gun, but, like, I personally don't have any of the tools that you would need. I live in an apartment. I don't have, like, a workshop space to, like, work on big things like that. I just, have my little sewing machine, my little sewing table. That's all I need. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. So we'll see how this goes. My first time making armor with help from friends, but hopefully, it'll turn out okay.
That brings me to a question a lot of people want me to ask cosplayers, and you kind of mentioned it there. It was like, what does your work area look like? Is it just spread out all over your place?
Sometimes I'll take stuff out into the living room if I want to watch something, because I don't have a TV in my room. So if I'm, like, watching something, I might take stuff out there and just, like, pin on, like, the floor or something, or, like, cut stuff out. But for the most part, it's just my room. I recently bought, like, a nice little desk, because before I had just, like, this crappy little table from Walmart, and even my friend was like, how does she use that little table? And I was like, yeah, it wasn't great. But now I have, like, a proper, like, desk. So I have a desk, and I have a sewing machine on my desk, and that's it. It's pretty much it. I use my bed and my floor, just pin stuff, and I also don't have a dress form or anything, so I have to try everything on just myself, on my body, and, like, pin it on myself, which is a bit difficult, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing too fancy.
Do you ever do commissions for anybody, or even, like, help somebody, not necessarily, like, do pay, but, like, help other people make stuff?
Yeah, I've never done commissions or anything like that, and I probably wouldn't feel confident enough to, nor would I, like, feel like I have enough time. I mean, even you trying to call me today, as you can see, I'm doing laundry, baking, and trying to work on my cosplay all at the same time, and I think that's a good example of what my life is, plus working full-time, like a real job. So I have enough time to make stuff for myself, so I wouldn't want to also make stuff for other people. Like, one of my friends was like, oh, if you make this, could you also make me one? And I was kind of like, yeah, but in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, how am I going to have time for that? But that's not anything that's actually planned anytime soon. But I have kind of, like, helped people with stuff, because I have a few friends that either they're more new to it, or I don't know, I guess I just have more experience with them in certain things. Like, I've kind of helped them with stuff. But I don't know, I feel like for the most part my friends are pretty, like, self-sufficient too. So I don't know, I guess we've helped each other more on things where we're, like, making the same thing. So I have one friend that we were making, like, matching outfits. So I would, like, go over to her house and we would, like, work on it together. And then one time Becky came to visit, and we were working on one of our costumes together, because it was, like, a uniform. Like, they were, like, suits, basically. So we, like, worked on those together because they had to match. So stuff like that, I'll kind of do, like, collaborative things, I guess. But for the most part, I just make my own stuff.
With, like, and I'll start to wrap this up a little bit to let you go, maybe get back to your food.
Yeah, I have to frost these cupcakes that I'm bringing to a barbecue for some friends that are graduating. So, yeah. But yes, go ahead.
To end stuff up, like with cosplay, what is the thing you think it's brought into your life the most? Is it like friendships or skills you've learned?
Definitely friendships and skills too. Like I said, I didn't even know how to sew before. But I think for me, I kind of mentioned it earlier. It's like having that creative outlet is what I really like. And the other thing is too, like I was saying, like, oh, I'm so busy. But like the kind of person that I am is that like I like being busy. Like I like feeling like I have stuff to do. But it's kind of like self-inflicted, you know, like it's like I have to do this cosplay. But so it's like more fun than just like I need to run errands. But I kind of like if I don't have something to work on or to work towards, I don't feel fulfilled. So that's why like I really like cosplay, because it's like a lot of like goal setting and you know working on stuff and like constantly having something to work on. That is just really good for me, like personally. Like I feel like it keeps me busy and it keeps me like satisfied, like with my life, I guess.
Well, once again, thank you for joining me today.
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
And if you want to tell people again one more time where they can find you online.
Yeah, so most of my cosplay stuff I posted on my Instagram, which is YOLO_Kurama. So it's like Yoko Kurama, but YOLO, because that's how I live my life. And my Twitter is the same. Twitter I don't post as often, but if you want to just see me retweet Fire Emblem fan art and talk about my life a little bit, you can follow me on there. And then, of course, our YouTube channel, Becky and I's YouTube channel, is the number 2.zealous.nerds. And if you want to check out our con vlogs, or we also have like a little introduction video where we kind of talk about ourselves and about our cosplays, and I talk about, you know, some of the same things that I've talked about in this interview and some different stuff if you want to check that out, and you can hear Becky's answers as well. Like I said, I know they're not like the best quality just yet, but we are working hard and we are getting a brand new camera soon. So expect an increase in video quality, hopefully.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much for interviewing me. It was fun.
Thank you.
Again, I'm really flattered. I don't think, you know, I'm anything special, but I appreciate it.
Give a listen to the podcast series Brain Leakage as we live podcast every single episode of Doctor Who from An Unearthly Child on. Yes, today is a set point in time. You can't change that. Not even a Time Lord could. Brain Leakage on Tin Pod Radio.